Welcome to the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Welcome to ITSP Magazine. Every company has a story to tell, from the small startup to the large enterprise, and everything in between. This is one of them. Knowledge is power, now more than ever.
Marco,
Sean.
I have a story to tell you.
Yeah?
But
how?
Very carefully. No, it's as we're preparing for this, I was thinking about a time of where we're talking about audience matters, words matter, and I harken back to an early part of my life where I was given the opportunity to watch Scarface, probably far younger than I was supposed to, and the message in there wasn't for me as a young kid. It was a movie for adults, and this doesn't directly relate to security and infosec programs, but the point is you have to know your audience, figure out what the message is you want to convey, and make sure that they get that message. And if you're presenting the wrong message to the wrong audience, who knows what you end up with? You end up with something like me, which you don't want necessarily.
You're going to be scared for the rest of your life.
That's
No,
right.
I think you're making a really good point. And for me, coming from branding and advertising, and actually one of my first gig was copywriting, that was exactly the first thing you need to do. Who are you writing this message for, and how is it going through? Do you need to use certain levers versus others? And I think we forget about that when we talk about technology. We use a lot of jargon, a lot of acronyms, and many times I have to search them to know what we're talking about, and that may damage the relationship on the board with people that are more business oriented, and maybe they need to be told the story in a different way. You're not changing it, you're just explaining it in a better way.
Exactly. And I think another part that's missing, and we're going to get into this fairly deeply here, but the part that's missing, I feel, is that oftentimes security programs describe what they're doing and not so much what they're doing to help the business and what you want the business to do to help you support them. So rather than me trying to pretend I know what I'm talking about, I'm just regurgitating Scarface quotes here in a few minutes. Let's get our good friend Demetrius Lazarikis. Laz, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Marco.
You matter, and your words matter for this podcast, and on the broader spectrum.
The words do matter. I mean,
exactly.
It's how we communicate every day, right?
Yeah, this applies on our everyday life. That's how you can get stuff done. Even when you talk to your kids, or you go in a store, try not to use the right words and see what kind of product you're going to get.
Exactly. And I think what's also, look, we're just chatting, right? I mean, it's like it's a weird time in the world, right? Everything's upside down, backwards, and we're trying to figure out, what are we going to do next? And the words do matter. And sadly, we're behind a 2x2 thumbnail, postage stamp size Zoom window for most of our time right now. And I think it's important that we, understand what, the power of those words.
Exactly. And in those words, we have to depict context. We have to understand perspective and connect all those dots. And remember that, yes, we're talking technology and business, but there is the human in there, right? So people think different things and have different views, and everybody's worried about their own thing, not your thing. So you have to get them worry about yours as well.
Yeah, we got a lot going on right now as a society, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I presume a lot of our listeners know who you are, and hopefully they had a chance to listen to the origin story for your organization.
Oh my gosh, what a great interview. I can't thank you guys enough for that. ITSP Magazine, Sean and Marco, thank you so much. It was just good to tell the story. There was a lot going on, and talking about, words matter, there's a lot of words and emotion in that interview. Thank
Yep.
you.
Yep.
Yeah, I definitely
Real and raw.
suggest everyone that is listening to this to finish to listen to this. Don't stop this, and then and then after that, go listen to the origin story, because it's connected. It's as you said, it's made of human and are the same human in this particular case. Last, so for those that really don't know who you are,
Well,
a little intro by yourself.
Yeah, I'm not going to assume that everybody listening is right. I'm
Will
just
be
gonna,
nice.
yeah. Look, I'm a security practitioner by training. I've spent 30 years in security, Air Force, and a bunch of other really cool opportunities post military. And I've been in the space for a long time. And I don't want to date myself, but my first computer was a Commodore VIC 20, and we'll stop there. But I think the other thing is, I've been a CISO a couple times, 3 times, and through that, I've had the opportunity to found a company, Blue Lava, which is a really powerful platform that helps security leaders. And just fortunate to be here today and share some thoughts on the topic. Words matter.
Yeah, and let's get into it, Laz, because we in the origin story podcast we talk about how you and the other 3 co-founders came together to build this platform by and for the CISO community. And my understanding is that I mean, let's be real. There's a ton of technology, there's a ton of data, and a ton of process sitting in IT and infosec. And the tech people and the security folks kind of know what they're doing in that world. But as soon as we try to cross over and sit in front of an exec staff or in front of a board or perhaps a potential acquisitor or an M&A event, we have to describe what's our security posture and how does that support the business. And so maybe just kind of set the stage. Where do you see things breaking down as we translate what we're doing to why we're doing it?
That's a great question. One of the things I've learned in my career, because I grew up as a practitioner and an engineer, is going to the board in technical jargon doesn't work. You can, but it'll be a career limiting move. So when I come at that question, Sean, I look at it and say, all right, well, when I'm trying to explain what I'm doing, I need to be thoughtful on a number of levels. And when I talk about being thoughtful, it's kind of like I take the view of who's the audience, right? Know your audience. That's part one. Number two is, what is their role with my program? And then the third part is, back to the human side of things. It's kind of like, well, what other external forces are going on that may be impacting them? So if I take an example, and I need to report on my security program and program management around it, what am I doing about that? Well, if I'm going to go to the board, I'm going to have a different way of presenting than I would to the business units versus the CFO or maybe an analyst. And everybody wants to understand about program management when we talk about security program management, but the audiences are always different. And so I have to be able to take the data and translate it into terms that they're all going to understand. And it's not going to be the same for each group. Everybody wants a different view or understanding of the data. It's a long answer, Sean. I just wanted you to get inside my head.
we're just scratching the surface here, Laz. So my follow-up question on that front then is, because another thing I also visualize, and you kind of touched on it, and maybe this is something we need to recognize as well, is we sit in our bubble, we collect our data, we use our tools, we pop our head out and and stick it into the boardroom and say, here's what we just did. And then we pop back down, or we need another 5 million because of X, Y, and Z. And we pop our head back down and run our program. How important is it to, and how, assuming it is important, how do we actually become part of the conversation, assuming that's critical?
All right. So there's like 4 questions there, Sean. So let me peel this back a little bit. The first question, no, and these are great questions. The first one is I'm getting ready to go to the board meeting. Well, all right. So if I'm going to pop my head up in the board meeting, that board meeting is usually 2 times or 4 times a year for 10 to 15 minutes. So the words I have to choose very carefully there are, how am I going to explain security program management at the board level 15 minutes 4 times a year? That gives me 1 hour in front of the board. So at the board level, what I highly recommend is getting to know the board members. First thing is understand who they are and what the board composition looks like. You can ask yourself, do I have a technologist on the board or not? If I do, maybe spend some time with that person so you can understand what he or she is thinking about for the company. As you know, you're thinking about 12 to 18 months with your program. They're thinking the same way about the business. That gives you a great starting point. If you don't have a technologist on the board, I would encourage you to figure out who on the board is part of the audit committee or the a committee for technology, somebody in there that would understand tech. That's going to be one way of getting in front of the board. If you're not reporting to them, you have to get a champion inside the company to help you get there. That's a short answer. Hopefully it gives you some insight to the board and board level reporting. The other aspect, Sean, that you're asking about, how do I get in front of them? Well, is it the board or the business? Because if it's the business, then that may be a different discussion. How do you get in front of them? Are you going to the monthly meetings? Are you doing the check-ins? How are you reporting on the business and the business performance and progress? And how are you mapping your security program to that process? 2 different audiences, 2 different questions.
And it will be nice if we always know who the audience is, right? But sometimes we don't. But we do know the big picture. By the big picture, what I mean is to know what is the goal, what we want to achieve. Right? You listen to a story and you're like, what did I learn from this story? What's the moral of the story? What did I get out of this? And if you don't have that in mind, and you don't know who the person that you're about to talk to, what's their style is, at least you know what you're trying to do. And I think that we all agree that when we talk about infosecurity, cybersecurity, what the story that we need to tell is how to translate risk to revenue, right? But not as scaring people. Actually tell them, look, this is why you're doing it. You're not doing it because you have to. You're doing it because it's good for the business. And I think that's where we are at now. And how do we do that?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things there. I believe that when you work with executives, the board, or the business, and speaking the language of the business, everybody understands what it's like to win. And when we talk about winning, the company, the performance of the company, if I'm watching a company whose business objectives are to grow 20 to 30% year over year organically or through acquisition, I have to consider, in my role as a security practitioner and a security leader, how am I going to explain what I do in business terms? Everybody understands performance inside the company, and everybody understands what it's like to run a business when you're inside the trenches and you're working to align to the business. So, Marco, to answer your question, I, as a security leader, as a practitioner, have to be able to take what I'm doing with my security program and program management and be able to articulate in the terms that they understand. So, for example, if we are growing 20 to 30% per year and we realize that we're going to have 2 acquisitions in the next quarter, how will security be inserted into that? And back to your original comment, where's the risk to revenue? We as security leaders have to figure out the best way to have that discussion earlier in the process than post acquisition. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to acquire a company or go through a joint venture and not perform security due diligence on that acquisition or that investment, and to find out, 90 days later that something bad happened in that environment, or they're not being they're not putting the same level of investment into their security program as you are. So having those types of discussions up front could help. Thinking about it, and that's just giving you an example about security program management and aligning it to this to the company's performance and goals.
And I like that you gave the example. Well, you gave a high level 20-30% growth, right? And the example used underneath that is you'll achieve that through 2 M&A transactions. Are there other examples you can give, and perhaps maybe use this opportunity to say, here's how I might change the language from my program to support that objective?
Yeah,
Growth
absolutely.
is by X, Y, and Z, and this is how we're going to work our program to do that.
Yeah. So let me just go one level deeper then on the acquisition example. So the company is going to grow 20 to 30%. We're going to acquire these 2 companies. We're going to build their business plan and infrastructure into our environment. Well, at that point, there's a natural discussion that could occur. How do we measure their security program? What do you mean? Well, our security program does A, B, and C. How do we know that they're at our level? Well, do we want them to be at our level or below our level? Well, what's the company goal? To get them integrated as quickly as possible? Yes. We want to recognize revenue faster? Yes. See, Sean, I'm not having a discussion about blocking OFAC countries with the WAF. I'm having a discussion in business terms, because now, then what we could do is we could say, let's look at what they're doing. Let's build a baseline of their security program and compare it to ours, giving us complete visibility in what they have and what they don't have. Hey, that makes sense. How long will that take? I mean, that's one of the reasons why I built Blue Lava with, our team, to understand what's happening with security program management more effectively and as quickly as possible. So if we're looking at that and we're basically saying, here's my program, here's what's going to happen with anything, I'm using an acquisition as an example, but I have to ask the business questions first, and then I can come back with what I have and what I don't have, whether it's an acquisition, a new project, a new, digital transformation project, a product, an application. I have to be in a position to ask those business questions first about what is the end goal, right? I mean, I think Marco and Sean, you've said this. Why are we doing this? And as a business, if I'm going to win, and in that winning, I have to understand that as an employee. Okay, great, we're all on the same page. Let me ask a couple business questions, but then let me talk to you then about the biggest risk to revenue. So let's say we've gone through this exercise, we've identified some of those business questions. Now what I can do is I can say, okay, well, I'm going to bring that infrastructure, or I'm going to, release this project, or we're going to work on several things. What is it in my program that has to be looked at or evaluated against the business target goals? Then I can look at it and say, and I could break things down. Well, what's going to be impacted by this, right? If it's a new project, is it cloud environment? Is it applications? Is my security team going to be impacted? See, I'm still having a business discussion, and now I'm bringing it to a level of, These are the resources I need in people, process and technology to be successful with my program. At some point, somebody will ask, where do you think our biggest gap is, or where is the risk to revenue? And that's when, you can have a discussion, but it doesn't have to be that, that discussion. And I think I've said this before, with, Sean, you and Marco, and, with the ITSP audience, and I've used this before as an example, but I have to know who my audience is. If I'm going to the IT director, or if I'm going to somebody that runs infrastructure, yes, I'm concerned about sensitive data being stored, processed, and transmitted on a USB device. Do we disable that on a laptop? Am I putting credit card data on that USB device, and is it going to the cloud somewhere? What about PHI, right? Personal healthcare information. Is that going out there? Am I going to have that level of discussion with the business? I'm going to talk more about the fines that are going to be imposed if we don't meet regulatory compliance. I'm going to discuss how that's not going to help the sales team be an enabler. I don't want to be the obstacle. I want the company to do well. And as long as I understand the business pieces, I can go have a discussion about the regulatory mandates and all the other pieces and parts I need with my program. And then I can talk about the risks, depending if the audience is technical or not technical. But then I go back to my original question. Do you have a technologist on your board? And if you do you know them? And does that person know what role technology plays in your world with security program management? Because we're going to see a lot of changes. And we're starting to see them now with CISOs and board level reporting. And my words of advice are, look, embrace it, because we've been asking for this for decades. CISOs have been always saying, hey, look, I want a seat at the table, and I want to talk about what I'm doing with my program and program management. And my second point is, after you embrace it, be ready to have your own internal translator. When we talk about words that matter, when we talk about words matter, they will matter, because you as a practitioner and a leader are going to be positioned for success when you're able to have that translation.
You touched on two words, sales enablement. And I want to spend a little more time here. I mean, we can talk about revenue, risk to revenue, and I completely appreciate everything you just described. A lot of great advice in there. Let's get to the brass tacks. Every business is selling something, a widget, service, goodwill. I don't know. They're selling something. How do we, as a security organization, help them with their sales? I know we talk about it a lot in the terms of being the department of no. We don't want to be the department of no. Let's take that even further. How do we help them sell better?
Well, I think so. There's a couple of things, Sean, that I found, and again, these are things that I found in my career and with my peers, and lessons learned the hard way. I think there's a couple opportunities for us, right? The first one is get to know the business, spend time with the business, understand, going back to what we were talking about earlier, understand what's going through their minds with those 4 objectives. I understand the business. I have to speak in their language. I have to also have empathy, and then I have to understand what's going on in the world, right? And as I understand those things, and I'm having an open and candid discussion with the business, understand what's their motivation. Is it to grow the 20 to 30%? How are they going to be impacted? How can I best partner with them to get things done? I think when we talk about sales enablement through that lens, I think what becomes critical, and it's almost like breathing. It's like, how can I make sure they're successful while protecting the company, the brand, and making sure that we do the right things? I don't want to put our company at risk, and that executive shouldn't want to put that company at risk either. And if you're telling me that we're going to acquire these 2 companies, and we don't have a good way, and I was using the DLP as an example. If you wanted to go down the technical path of that, let's just say I know as an engineer that we have, a DLP solution and it's tracking all sorts of information. It could be, credit card, PHI, it could be, sensitive financials, product roadmap, could be, things that are going to happen in the future with product releases or sales strategies, go-to-market strategies. I don't have to be able to talk about DLP in that context. What I have to be able to do is bubble it up and just say what I just said. Hey, business partner X, with the things that we're going to go do now with these 2 acquisitions, here's where we're going to have gaps. Do we want sensitive information out there in the public, specifically our go-to-market strategy, our financials? What if we're pre-IPO? Am I willing to take that risk? Usually that's the discussion I will have with a business leader. And just making sure that I'm bringing them along, because a lot of this is really, I want you to win. Here are the things I'm worried about. Are you worried about them too? How do we get risk acceptance in that process? Because at the end of the day, if that person is in charge of selling that widget or that item, I want them to be successful. I want the company to be successful. How do we work together to make that happen? Now, look, it's not always going to be.
I'm going to pause you quickly because
Yeah.
I think the answer is back to one of your previous points in program management.
Right.
There's a sales program and there's a security program. And maybe you can shed some light on how important is it to understand their program, how they work, how their systems work, the workflows they use, where they're pulling in data from customers, how they use that data. Because to me, that seems like where a big chunk of understanding what they do will then drive what you do.
Right. So if we go back to those 4 areas that I was mentioning, what are their, are the company goals their goals, right? And understanding that process and understanding what's happening with the tools and the technology and the people that are making those programs run in harmony. Well, I've got a similar set of things in my program, and understanding how that group or that business unit functions will then be essential for us to demonstrate to them how we map our program to those business requirements and those business goals.
Yep. So this all makes sense, but I think we need to give some tips as we start wrapping here on going back to where we started. How word matters and how
Scarface?
do we... Yeah, exactly. Scarface. How do we watch Scarface tonight? No, but in a way it is. How do we suggest what is the right movie to watch, the right story to tell, or even better, how can we tell that story in the right language and kind of remove it? And, you said something important before. I mean, at the end of the day, most of the time, people that are very involved into this, there are engineers, there are programmers, there are computer science, and it's hard to remove that language. That's what you study for. This is what is in your blood. How do you scrap that? Like a good example, it was before you use the DLP, and I'm thinking like, what the hell is DLP, right? So it works if you're talking to somebody that is on your planet, but it doesn't work with that. So what is your advice where you're telling people, other CISO or other security engineer and they go to the board, like, how do you do that? How do you clean your language? And by clean, I don't mean it's a dirty language. It's how do you prepare for the people you're talking to?
It's only 3 letters, DLP, not 4.
Understood. I think, again, I'm sharing things that have worked for me. I'm not being prescriptive.
Of course.
I'm confident that, everybody, has the ability to do what you're asking, Marco. The question is if I'm an engineer, do I want to change my strategy for career advancement to management? Because I could stay in technology for the rest of my career, and that's cool. Or if I go down the management path, I have to make some adjustments. And those adjustments are going to revolve around three things. So what I would recommend is I would recommend starting to learn more about the business, whether it's your business, you start to read more about business and business management. Um, Understanding your business would be critical. And then, understanding business and business management pieces, and how they're going to get there. They being the business, how are they going to achieve that goal? That's number one, understanding the business more. And there's so many wonderful things out there that you can read, and there's a lot of information out there about understanding the business. But I think it's imperative, number one, you start with your business. Number two, when you're looking at this and you've never done it before, if you haven't reported to the board, find somebody who has. Reach out. I mean, there's so many different ways to network with people today. The CISO community is really supportive, and I'm confident you can find 2 to 3 people. Let's just say you could find 2 to 3 people that have reported to the board or are reporting to the board, and ask them for coaching. Because as CISOs, I believe that we're wired in a way where we want to help people. So number two would be seek out your peers that have reported to exec staff and the board, and they've been successful. And I always like to learn also from the people that have been unsuccessful. What would they do differently and why? What would they have changed? And then the third one is, as you're on this path, I think that we have to lose the jargon. And it's interesting, Marco saying DLP, and like for us in the security practice, that's like breathing, right? We understand what that is. We understand what's going on there with DLP and the acronyms, but it's not going to resonate. It may not resonate well in your organization. So the top 3 things, just to quickly recap on those, Marco and Sean, would be understand your business. Surround yourself with the people that have reported to the board or the executive committee or the executives. Learn from what they've done that works and then doesn't work. And then the third thing is thinking about how you're going to lose the technical jargon. Don't lose it for all discussions, but at the board level or exec staff. And how are you going to translate that so you can flip it around and make it a productive discussion?
I love it, Laz. And I'm going to use this opportunity here as we come to the close to, I guess I want to highlight the work that you've been doing in your entire career, and then now with the Blue Lava platform and the community. Because everything we just talked about assumes we have the data to help us tell the story. Otherwise, we're just making stuff up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to have the data, and it's not just the security data. It's the business partners data as well that we have to understand. Where are they driving? What areas of the world are they doing business in? Who are they working with? What supply chain are they involved with? Who are their business partners? What kind of the data are they working with? What are the regulations? All this stuff we have to collect and understand. That data has to come from somewhere, and then you have to ingest it, put a program around it, and then spit it back out. Here's how we're helping all of this work. And so, as a final word, talk to me a little bit about how you are taking your experiences working with peers in the community, fellow CISOs from all over the place, to help collect the right data, ingest it, program it, put a program around it, and then create those words that matter.
Yeah. Well, I've had the opportunity, Sean, to work with some amazing people in my career, and those people have been very supportive when we started to build out Blue Lava and the Blue Lava platform, because the problems that you're outlining right now were many of the reasons why we founded the company and we're doing what we're doing. We saw a problem of security program management and aligning it to the business. And we've been successful with taking the information, understanding what the business is and what resonates with the business, taking the ability to look at the data, ask the business what their objective is, understanding what I have and what I don't have using the Blue Lava platform, take that information, then map it together, and then give them reports that resonate at any level inside the company. Could be the board level, it could be the C-suite, it could be management layer, or it could be an analyst. I think it's important to ask the question once, use the data many times for different purposes, but going back to the original theme, right? Words matter. I have to understand my audience. I need a place to have all my data. And the example I'm using is using the Blue Lava platform. I answer once, I can repurpose for many uses.
Love it.
Yep.
Love it.
And Sean, the next time you go to do the blood test, don't forget to check your DLP is in range. Talking about another categories that talk with a lot of acronyms, right?
Yes, exactly. Well, I think it's clear to me in the words we had today that this doesn't happen magically, right? We have to take a pause. We have to recognize where we sit in relation to the business, and engage ourselves in the business and work with the business partners to get their perspective, right? And then present our story to them in a way that matters to get them, well, first off, to help enable them to succeed, and then to get them to help support us in that effort with whatever that means, providing data or allocating resources in order to support the programs that are being built. It's a team sport, right, Laz? Team sport.
Correct. Security has become a team sport. Absolutely. And I think to close with this, in words that matter, as security leaders, we have to be able to measure, optimize, and communicate what we're doing at any level of the organization.
Nice one. Well put, Laz.
Yeah, I'm not going to add anything to that.
No. I will add that it's always a treat to have these conversations with you, always enlightening, very operational, and a lot of things folks can take away from these conversations. There'll be show notes that includes links to important things that Laz spoke to, his words in other formats, other mediums. And I appreciate everybody listening to this story from our good friend Laz at Blue Lava. Thank you, Laz.
All right. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Marco.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you learned something new and the story made you think, then share itspmagazine.com with your friends, family, and colleagues. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey. You can always find us at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society.